The internet is going to make it very difficult to collect taxes on services of all kinds. After all, you can complete these transactions in cyberspace, not on the ground. Computer companies now are getting their programming done in India. I doubt that anybody's paying any taxes on any of that. So that I think that the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash, a method whereby on the internet you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A. The way in which I can take a $20 bill and hand it over to you, and there's no record of where it came from. And you may get that without knowing who I am. That kind of thing will develop on the internet, and that will make it even easier for people to use the internet. Of course, it has its negative side. It means that the gangsters, the people who are engaged in illegal transactions will also have an easier way to carry on their business. But I think that the tendency to make it harder to collect taxes will be a very important positive effect of the internet.
Welcome Bitcoin friends, it's Bitcoin Mamo. Today we're going to look at the Bitcoin chart. We'll do some TA. Bitcoin has had quite the pump over the last 10 days, so we'll look at where Bitcoin might be heading and some possible key levels as we come into this weekly close and open a new week and also a new month. So let's get straight into it and let's get into the charts. So I've just got Bitcoin here on the daily. I've just got a couple of trend lines here connecting the bottoms here, and also gets this high here on this pump up where we did get rejected, and also have another trend line here connecting the high after the bounce from the low here and the next high, and one more trend line here connecting the two tops from the peak. And we can see currently we are coming up to that level. We have got a small rejection so far, so we could possibly see a pullback here. And I've also just got a fib drawn here from the low where we've had this bounce to the current high. And what's interesting here is if you do a fib extension, the 1.618 level, I've done it negative 1.618 because I've got this inverted looking at areas on a pullback where Bitcoin might come back to. But if we look at this level, this negative 1.618, pretty much lines up exactly with the peak here. So we are seeing that 1.618 play a role again, and does come up over and over again. So I think we might get a pullback here. There is some confluence with these levels. And if we pulled up a couple more fib levels here, we can see the negative 1.272 pretty much lines up with this peak. And the negative 618 level isn't quite exact, but it does sort of get this peak here also. So I think we might have a bit of a pullback here, and we'll just have to see how deep that pullback goes. We could possibly come back to this trend line here, which would also be the 0.5 level retracement, which we do see quite often. And I do think this trend line does have a lot of validity because it does get these two bounces and also a rejection here. So if we were to bounce off this trend line after a pullback, we would then flip this trend line into support. And I would expect us to go higher and make another move to the upside. If we pull up the VPVR here, we can see that the point of control, the most volume was traded at this price level. And we see it pretty much lines up with the 0.5 level. And this level is around 35.9, 36,000 approximately. And it would also line up with this trend line. So I do think we might come back to this trend line and then get a bounce. If we look at the stochastic RSI, we have been quite high here for a little bit. So this might be looking to come back down on the daily. And also the RSI has gotten above this dotted line. Doesn't mean we have to have a pullback. Things are slightly overbought at the moment. We are of course above a lot of this VPVR levels here. And there isn't much resistance when looking at the VPVR above this level. So Bitcoin could just carry on higher. But we are seeing a pullback at the moment off this top trend line. We pull up the daily EMA ribbon. You can see we were below this for quite a long time. It held us down every time we came back up into it. And then we've smashed through that. and it has flipped. This yellow line has gone above the red line, so that's a very good sign for the bulls. The top of this EMA ribbon is around 36.8, so I think we may come back down to test this ribbon and use it as support. I'll be looking to get into a long trade somewhere in this area, perhaps between the 382 level and the 0.5 level. And still on the daily here, I've got the 50-day moving average in yellow, and the lighter yellow one is the exponential moving average, also the 50, and the red one here is the 200-day moving average, and the lighter red one, the 200-day exponential moving average. So we did get above the 50s here, and we've come back up, and we've got above the 200-day exponential moving average. We haven't quite come to the 200 daily moving average here, but I think we'll probably stay in this range between these moving averages. To have this death cross here, we had this big drop down, we stabilized, and now these 50 moving averages are starting to tick up again, and we start to look for a golden cross on the other side. And just zooming in a bit further, we can see with the exponentials here, the lighter colored ones, the yellow is coming up here. So we would be looking for a golden cross between these two first. If we do get this pullback, perhaps to this 0.5 level, would possibly line up with the 50-day moving average here. So another point of confluence where would be a good position to get into a long. And I just want to talk about one other pattern here. If we were to get above this trend line connecting the peaks here, and we are getting resistance at the moment, if we were to get above this trend line, use it as support, this pattern would be known as a bump and run pattern. This is called the pattern site and does show several charting patterns, and we can see here just an example of a bump and run pattern. Usually you connect the two peaks before a big drop, and then when we come back up with a U shape, quite often we do get resistance at the trend line, but then when we do get above it, we carry on a lot higher. And here's just another example of that one here. And we can see we connect the tops, so we have this big drop down, this U shape where we come back up, and once we get above the trend line here, sometimes we come back and retest the trend line, but generally overall we do end up going quite a lot higher. And just to show you another example here on the Bitcoin chart of this pattern, this was the stock market crash here back in March of last year. So we just connect the previous two peaks here before a big drop and take it across. We have this U shape. We can see once we got above this trend line, we came back, tested it as support, and then once we did get above it with that bounce, of course we carried on a lot higher. So I do think a similar thing might play out here. And now looking at the Bitcoin futures chart on CME, and of course we have this gap here higher up, which is at around 46.6 to 48.4. And we also have this gap that we created before this big pump up, which is around 34.2 to 32.9. And just important to be aware of these gaps. We don't have to fill them. We do have gaps lower. We also have this gap here, which never got filled. We're thinking we might have had one more big drop here to try to fill this gap, but looks like we have gone higher. So just important to be aware of them. We could always come back down here to fill this gap, and this would also be around the golden pocket area here, and also the main point of control on the VPVR. We can see a lot of support here on the VPVR going down to around that 36.2 level, and Bitcoin does seem quite bullish. So at the moment I think we might have that pullback possibly to the 0.5 level and this trend line when looking at the spot price chart, and do a similar thing on the futures chart here. And over to Bitcoin on the weekly, and we did have this falling wedge pattern drawn that we were looking at in previous videos, and we can see we broke above, and we did close that week above the trend line. We opened the new week outside of the triangle, and we had this big pump. And if we were to take a measured move of this triangle, we can take it here from the second touch point and just using the same length line, and we can see the measured move here would be around 47,000, which would also be this 0.5 level, taking the fib from the peak to the low down here. Another important thing for the bulls here is are actually above the EMA ribbon now. It did come down and stay in this ribbon for quite a while. We even closed below the ribbon, but we never opened and closed the candle below the ribbon. And I mentioned in a video on this weekly candle that I would like to see Bitcoin come back into this ribbon before the week closes, and we did get that big run up here. We will be opening a new weekly candle in a few hours. So if we can stay above this ribbon, the top of the ribbon is at 39.6. So if we do close today and the weekly above 39.6 and open the candle above the ribbon, that would be a really good sign for the bulls. We are also currently above the 21-week exponential moving average here, which is at 39.6, pretty much the top of that EMA ribbon. And the weekly stochastic RSI is just starting to get a tick up here. So we will have a new candle, of course, in a few hours, and would be good to see Bitcoin start coming back up into this purple area on the stochastic RSI. And looking on the bi-weekly chart, we do also open a new bi-weekly candle in a few hours. And we did have these ranges drawn here, looking at the supply demand zone here. And we were stuck in this box for quite a while. We closed below, managed to get back above it, and we also have one drawn up here where we may get resistance when we get up to this level, and this is at around 45,000 to 48.5. We can see that 0.5 level lies in between this box. Also drawing this downward sloping trend line, but on the bi-weekly, we can see when we do open this new candle in a few hours, the top of this trend line would be around 43.3. So we may get some resistance there if we don't get a pullback before that. And not only are we opening the weekly and the bi-weekly in a few hours, we're also opening the tri-weekly. I can see even on the 3-week chart here, the stochastic RSI did come all the way down pretty much to the 0 level, and it's looking to start getting a tick back up. We did just open a new monthly candle, and looking at the stochastic RSI, even the monthly came down to a 18 reading. We can see drawing the trend line on the monthly chart that the top of this trend line is around 43,000, and we did get close to that with this wick. But of course the monthly has only just opened, so plenty of time to go on that one. And quickly looking at market Cipher, we can see that daily has come up quite a lot here. It hasn't got that red dot yet, but we do have one on the 12-hour, I believe, and we do currently have one present on the 12-hour. You can also see that the money flow here has also come into the green for the first time all the way back since early May, before this big drop. We also have been looking these past 2 weeks for this green dot on the weekly chart, and it did appear during the week, and it did actually appear on the open at around 35.6, and we did have that green dot. So as long as we stay above 35.6 before the new week opens in a few hours, this green dot's pretty much confirmed, and that's the one we've been waiting for. Give me confidence that we're going to carry on higher. So in the short term we might get a pullback, but in the long term I think we're going a lot higher here. And again, the last green dot that we had was all the way back in April of last year, so well over a year ago. It was after that stock market crash when we started recovering. We were around 7,000. You can see that was a great time to get into a long position. But I do still think we're going to have a small pullback first, maybe to 36, 37,000, and hopefully get into a nice long trade there. And we did show this chart a couple of weeks ago, and this is just market Cipher loaded many times, and it's got the daily at the top, 2-day, then 3-day, the 4-day, and then the weekly, and it's just showing the green dots without all the other information. And we did say once we get that weekly green dot, then that confirms to me that we're really going to start going a lot higher now and break this range. And we see we got it on the 1-day, the 2-day, the 3-day, and the 4-day, but then we never got it on the weekly here. We had this big drop, and we can see we've got that green dot finally on the weekly. We also got close on this run here, but we didn't get that green dot, but we do have that now, and it will be confirmed in a few hours. And that's the sign we've been waiting for this bull market to continue. And just quickly on the US dollar here, we did talk about this a while back in the videos about all this bearish divergence that was building up on the daily. We're getting lower highs on the RSI, high highs on the price, and I said I think the dollar's going to start dropping, and when it does, this might be a good sign that Bitcoin will start going up. And it did pretty much coincide with Bitcoin going up here after we made the highest point here, and then we did start coming down. Bitcoin pretty much started going up here around the 21st of July. So just wanted to go back on that to show you that it did play out. And again, I think we could possibly come back down to this trend line and Bitcoin could have quite a nice run as we do going into possibly middle of September here. Just to show you that here, this was the 21st of July. We can see that was the day that we started pumping back up to the upside. And one other thing, this is from the previous video where we looked at more of a longer term analysis, and I just want to go into the 2013 bull run quickly here. You can see we had this double peak bull run here. We got resistance at the 1.618, came down to the 1.272. This is the fib extension from the previous peak to the bear market low, and we can see we bounced off that 1.272 level, came up to the 1.414 level, and did act as resistance for a little bit here. We went sideways, and once we went above here, we did have another big run up, came back down to test it one more time, and then we really took off and finished off that bull run. So just want to compare that to the current cycle here. As we can see, we did a similar thing. We got up to that 1.618 level. We pulled back to the 1.272 level. We did go below it, but we never opened and closed the candle below it. And now we've pumped up. We've come up to this 1.414 level, like in that 2013 cycle. So another sign that we might have some resistance here, or at least go sideways for a little while, and then break this key level and possibly make a run higher. Maybe even do a similar thing, come back and retest it before trying to head back to the 60,000 area and this 1.618 level again. So will be something to keep an eye on and keep comparing those two cycles. This is on the 4-hour chart, and we have been building up this bearish divergence here. We can see higher highs on the price here, 4 higher highs, but lower highs on the RSI. So we are getting this divergence built up here. So we could see a pullback, like I said, maybe to this 0.5 level at 36,000 approximately. We do also see the stochastic RSI coming down. The 12-hour chart does also have the bearish divergence, so it is on some higher time frames as well here. And we can see higher highs in the price action and lower highs in the RSI. We can see the stochastic RSI has already cooled off quite a bit. It's down to 28 level, but there is still room to go lower here. So it wouldn't surprise me if we do get that pullback. And again, I'll be looking for a long, perhaps between the 382 level at 37.5 down to around the 36,000 level. So thanks for watching. I hope that was informative, and we'll have to see how the weekly opens. I think, like I said, Bitcoin is possibly going to have a small pullback to 36, 37k and then carry on higher. So thanks for watching. I'm Bitcoin Mamo. I'll see you next time. Bye.